Hi, my name is Jonathan Zemsky, and I am very excited to continue reading my novel Beyond the Shadows of Summer to you. Just a quick reminder that this book is recommended for ages 10 or 11 plus, has some themes of teen sexuality and language, and some strong themes of death and loss. But there's a lot of fun stuff coming up. Chapter 6, Twilight Parade. G-Man knew something about me was off. When he strolled in, I was cleaning the ice cream machines like my life depended on it. What's gotten into you? You bucking for a promotion? He asked. Nah, it's just my first real job, and I wanted to make a good impression, I answered. I looked at him out of the corner of my eye to see if he was buying it. Yeah, right, he said, as he saw right through me. He changed the subject. Hey, have you checked out the beauty who's working with Millie across the way? Nope, I said, and I started cleaning even faster. She is beyond fine. A stroke of perfection, he elaborated. I started to grit my teeth as he continued on. A red-headed bombshell. A gift from the... Enough, I yelled at him, and watched his eyes widen with whatever looked like confusion. She's whatever, just whatever. I thought you said you didn't see her, he said, rubbing his chin. Yeah, I saw her, and up close she's just average, if you ask me. She and Millie make the perfect team, the annoying duo. G-Man looked at me with wide eyes, and I went back to work. Man, if she's average, I'd like to see your choice of beauty queen. Are you going to help me or just stand there, I said, disinterested in the current topic. You are beyond my help, Dr. Frozenstein. Way beyond. The name Dr. Frozenstein played in my mind a few times until it sounded so ridiculous I had to laugh. G-Man's small dig at me lightened my mood a little, but my laugh was quickly stymied by a sudden uncomfortable feeling in my gut. I twitched and shot my head towards the window, where 9 fingers were now visible on the counter. Hey, Bert, I called out before he was able to pop his head through the window. Afternoon, boys. Promises to be a wonderful showing this year. We nodded at him. Hey, Bert, you work in the stables again this year, I asked. Yes, sir, you betcha. My 25th year at the fair. Man, how the time flies. Before you know it, you gentlemen will be on your 25th year, he said with a strong grin. I'm not sure Bert interrupted. Keep a watch on those shadows, for they are often more revealing than the sun. G-Man and I looked at each other and just shrugged our shoulders. Bert was always saying strange stuff, but I swear his comments were getting even more bizarre lately. By the time we looked back up to ask him what he had meant, he was gone. Bert was an interesting mix of kind and creepy. He was always cordial, but his deep, raspy voice made him sound intimidating. His movements were graceful, like when he was laying chalk down on the field, but his oversized frame could scare off a pride of lions. And his handshake was more friendly than fierce, but there was that finger, or the lack thereof. Bert was the hardest working man I knew. He worked double duty, as many people in Springfield did. Betty Roberts, who worked the morning shift at the Greasy Spoon, spent her afternoons going door to door selling Avon products to middle-aged women. Gil Masters, a town fireman, pumped gas on weekends, and Bert, the Chapman Field groundskeeper, worked in the He worked in the stables at the fair. Bert had no family in Springfield that we knew of, and needed the extra money to keep his small 2-bedroom house on Mason Street. His mother died a long time ago, and he never met his father. Bert never married. He told me a few years ago he was still looking for the right lady. Bert put a ton of pride into what others might have thought of as menial tasks. Chalking the ball field, shoveling horse manure, and baling hay weren't the most celebrated jobs, but he talked about them like they were as vital as the president's. The mirror sees us all the same, he once said to me. Bert was stellar at his jobs, too. The impeccable chalk lines he laid at Chapman Field were as immaculate as the coats on the horses he cleaned. Brand and I visited the stables, which he referred to Bert's stables, since I could remember. My friends also enjoyed the horses. They were the only things that seemed to have a calming effect on Fizz. G-Man had a special interest in the stables as well, but not because of the horses. He was in love with one of the riders, Marie Ray Wilder. Although she was 2 years older than him, she seemed to like him as well. Their relationship, however, had not made it past casual flirting. Sometimes it's hard to explain why people don't get together. In this case, it was pretty easy. Wealthy white girl from the west side of town and poor colored boy from the east side just don't mix. Some folks expend an awful lot of energy to make sure of it, too. G-Man and Marie both knew the rules, but decided to allow their hearts to pay the price. When Alex Pample arrived at work, G-Man and I had already cleaned, primed, and stocked the machines. We were armed with gallons of ice cream, 2 kinds of cones, and a slew of toppings. I greeted Alex and found myself staring at the dirty, tattered clothing barely hanging from his wiry frame. I held back, but G-Man just couldn't. Hey, Pample, you could have showered before your first day of work. I mean, we're serving food here. Alex blinked twice at G-Man, wiped the snot from his nose onto his sleeve, and just stood there staring off in the distance. The long silence that followed must have made G-Man feel uncomfortable, so he let it go. Don't sweat it, kid. Just get your apron on and watch the master at work. G-Man loved to feel like he was the expert of everything. In fact, he usually was. He was the strongest, fastest, and smartest of the bunch, and he didn't mind telling you so. It didn't bother me because I knew he wasn't all confident. He felt bad about his stuttering, real bad. One time he told me that he would trade half his brains and strength just to be able to speak like a normal person. I sound like a bumbling moron, he told me. I didn't answer him because I didn't know what to say. In fact, that is why I never brought up the topic. At around 1 o'clock that afternoon, we had our first customer, Fizz. We didn't have a bell to ring for service, so instead he decided to plant a pebble in my right shoulder with his slingshot. He could knock a pimple off your nose with that thing. Hey, ladies and gents, he said. Hey, Fizz, I replied as I stepped to the counter to greet him. I'll have a triple-double scoop with chocolate sprinkles, please, he beamed. Fizz, that's not even on the menu, I said. Oh, heck, just give me the biggest cone you can whip up. All right, keep your overalls on, I replied. I spun around and made the cone while G-Man and Fizz whispered to each other, barely out of my earshot. I struggled to balance the top-heavy cone, which Fizz almost dropped because he was looking at the corn dog stand as I was handing it to him. Hey guys, you see the new honey? Fizz asked. Yup, but James here must be going blind, G-Man said. Been towing the line too much, Fizz said as he shot me a sinister smile. Oh, shut it, I snapped. He told me just a minute ago that she was average, G-Man said, wearing a big smile across his face. Fizz kept his eyes fixed on the girl and said, Man, if she's average, you are the creature from the Black Lagoon. I thanked him for his compliment and was quickly distracted by something on his shirt. He had taped something over his button. Instead of it reading, I have had a chest x-ray for your protection, it now said, I x-ray chests. G-Man burst out laughing when he read it, but I wasn't amused. You're not going to make it through one day. You'll be fired for sure, I told him. Nah, if old Swifty can't see the full moon on a clear night, he's never going to be able to read my button. I laughed off his cockiness and asked him where Costello was. I reckon he's holding down the fort. You're not taking advantage already, are you? I said. Nope, this is my lunch break, he said, as he turned around again to glance at the redhead. What a fox! Whatever, I said under my breath. Before he left, Fizz gave us permission to talk to the girl at the corn dog stand, but said that Mamie Van Doren was off limits. She's all mine, for now and forever, he said through a goofy smile. Anyway, I gotta get back to work. What a novel idea, I said. Costello's probably panicking already. Not that work. This work, he said, holding up the melting cone. He walked away chuckling as he licked ice cream from his finger to his elbow. We had a few customers off and on for the next couple of hours, which gave us the chance to get used to pouring the ice cream. It was an art form. You had to twist the cone or cup at the perfect speed to get the ideal swirling effect. I was great at it. Alex was also pretty good, but G-Man stunk. His shirt had tasted more ice cream than our customers. I rejoiced in this rare opportunity to tease him, and he promptly punched me in the arm. The pain kept me quiet for a while. G-Man was especially upset when Alex poured a perfect cone way before he did. When quitting time, 6:30, finally came around, I was starving. The mini donuts I had shared with G-Man earlier in the day were very tasty, but just didn't hold me over. Thank goodness our replacements arrived on time. 2 girls and a guy, Sally, Jill, and Sid, took over. They were high school seniors and were called in to be the responsible crew to clean up, lock up, and close out the register. I didn't mind, as long as I didn't have to work. As the sun went down, I was happy, and besides, I had plenty of years of responsibility ahead of me. I didn't want to ruin my first job by smothering it with all this responsibility. G-Man and I left quickly and without asking. G-Man and I left quickly and without asking Alex to join us. The thought crossed my mind, but I figured seeing him hold a burger and a booger at the same time might send G-Man off the deep end. As we walked past the front of our cow, I noticed that the corn dog stand had had a shift change too. I quickly glanced around to see if the redhead girl from the soda shop was anywhere in sight. I exhaled a long sigh of relief when I saw no sign of her. We met up with Fizz and Costello to grab some burgers and corn dogs from the food tent. The sun had fallen beneath the horizon, and the darkening sky made everything appear crisp to the eyes. This had always been my favorite time of day, even though it usually meant it was time to put the baseball gloves to rest. There was something magical about it. The bright colors faded and the shadows dissolved into the growing night. Everything turned a shade of green, as it borrowed color from the grass and trees. It's too bad that this time of day went by so fast. In a quick blink, night was upon us. As we finished our meal, we heard the sound of the parade approaching. Fizz jumped up on the table to get a better view. He probably wanted to see if Mamie Van Doren was riding on any of the floats. Everyone followed his lead except me. The sound of the approaching bagpipes made me think of Brand. We had always gone to the opening twilight parade together. When he was younger, he would hold my hand and duck behind me when any of the sounds got too noisy. I looked down at my brother and marveled at his intensity. His eyes were wide and locked in on the empty street, his head motionless. The wind whistled through the crowd, who were silenced by their anticipation until finally, the tinny sound of the bagpipes could be heard. The mass roared and Brand's excitement flowed from his body to mine as he almost crushed my hand. The bagpipers were upon us. The parade had begun. Brand glanced at me for a fraction of a second, and then shot his head back toward the parade. The next troop was a host of pom-pom girls and baton twirlers. They tossed their batons and spun their bodies, stopping on a dime to catch the batons just before they hit the ground. The high school marching bands were next. Jacksonville, Auburn, and even Lincoln, whose players traveled from 20 to 30 miles away, marched down the main street. They were meticulously dressed in colorful uniforms and walked in perfect formations. The pounding of their drum corps echoed through my chest until my heart seemed to share their rhythm. Brand briefly discovered his ears as the drummers passed right in front of us. Jacksonville's trumpets caught the street lights rays during Anchors Away, which sent a chill down my spine. Circus music could be heard and slowly drowned out the echoes of the departing bands. The Shriners' clown cars were upon us. The clowns were the exact opposite of the marching bands. They scuttled in random motion, engaged in raucous behaviors, and all to a plethora of zany noises. They drove in wacky patterns, weaving in and out of each other as they honked their horns. Other clowns followed on foot. 4 were juggling, and 3 were chasing each other. Bran laughed and pointed at their every move. The last clown kept threatening to throw a pie in the face of different audience members. When he approached me, I could feel something tapping me on the head. I looked up to find Bran's finger. He was standing on his tippy toes and trying to get the clown to smack that pie into my face. "Oh, no, you don't," I said as I quickly pushed my brother forward, offering him as a new pie target. The clown reared back to throw his pie, and the crowd gasped. As the pie came forward, the clown quickly stopped, and the crowd cheered. Bran looked at me and we started to laugh. Our cackling didn't stop when the clown emptied almost a whole can of whipped topping into our faces. We licked our mouths and cleared whipped cream from our faces as the milk trucks approached. They played music while the fire engines immediately behind them rang their sirens. Bran stepped behind me and placed his hands to his ears for temporary relief from the blaring scream of the fire engine siren. The political floats were next. One float featured the head of Abraham Lincoln, made of papier-mâché. Another was a dedication to Harry S. Truman, and a third to Dwight D. Eisenhower, which were both covered with hundreds of colorful flowers. The governor, mayor, and town representatives flooded the streets, giving thumbs up to the prospective voters. Their presence brought boredom to the faces of most of the children in attendance. The only solace was that the departure of these floats meant the horses were soon to follow. Every boy dreamt of being the cowboy who came to the aid of a poor farm girl and her family. So when the horse-drawn carriage led the small herd of horses through the streets, every boy's hand took the shape of a six-shooter, pointer finger poised and ready for action. Bran's was no different. I could even hear him make the sound of the shots firing. Pshoo, pshoo. He looked up at me and said, "You're my hero, Jesse James." "James? You okay, James?" Costello finally snapped me out of my trance. Yeah, I'm fine, I said. But I wasn't.